he was so obsessed with his lizards. All he wanted was to photograph the lizards. He never wanted to put me in a close-up. He photographed everybody else in close-up, but not me. But I remember, to my relief, a few fans were there. And they said, Nick, can we please have a picture with you? And they got right there, and I said, sure, honey. And we took a great picture again. I said, you see, Werner, some people do want me in a close-up. Moonstruck. I had made a movie called Peggy Sue Got Married. Cher had seen that movie. And she immediately said, I saw Peggy Sue Got Married, and I thought your performance was like watching a 2-hour car accident or a train wreck. I was kind of amazed that she saw it that way, and also that she wanted to work with me as the result of seeing a 2-hour car accident, but that she wanted me to play Ronnie Camilleri. And I was deeply flattered because I still am a fan of Cher. There's a moment where I raised the wooden hand and I said, I lost my hand, I lost my bride. And I think I got that idea from watching Fritz Lang's Metropolis. I think there's a moment in that movie, I'm not 100% certain, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I do believe I was inspired by a moment in that movie when the doctor ripped off the glove from his metallic hand, and he did that, and I wanted to be kind of German expressionistic, like the old Metropolis movie by Fritz Lang.
I lost my hand! I lost my bride! Johnny has his hand! Johnny has his bride! You want me to take my heartbreak, put it away, and forget?
When I read the script, the fantastic John Patrick Shanley script, I somehow responded to it like Beauty and the Beast. And I had been a big fan of Jean Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast. Jean Marais' performance as the Beast, and he would talk like that in French, in French.
Vous volez mes roses. Vous volez mes roses, qui sont ce que j'aime le mieux au monde.
I wanted to speak like that because I had responded to the script that way. And about 2 weeks into production, I went home for the holidays and I got a call from the director, Norman Jewison, who said, Nick, the dailies aren't working. I want you to drop the Jean Marais. This voice you're doing is not working. And I dropped the Jean Marais. But what's fascinating is when John Patrick Shanley and I talked about the script, he said the original title was not Moonstruck. It was The Wolf and the Bride. So I think I was tapping into something from the screenwriter. Raising Arizona. H.I. McDonough, to me, was like a living cartoon. I saw him as Woody Woodpecker, and so much so that I even put the thrush muffler tattoo, the woodpecker with the cigar and red feathers whipped back in the wind as a tattoo for H.I. McDonough, put it on the character's arm. I would rub my hair until the static electricity would make it lift up so that I was like Woody Woodpecker and would look like Woody Woodpecker. I must have auditioned for that movie about 20 times. Joel and Ethan, they would laugh every time, but then they would say during the audition, we're laughing, we can't stop laughing, but we don't know why we're laughing. So there was a little bit of trepidation. And then they cast me, and I was thrilled because I knew right away when I had read the script that this was going to be a winner, that this could really be something special. About a week into rehearsals, Joel took me aside. He said, I could have cast Kevin Costner in this part, or I could have cast this. And I said, well, why did you cast me? And that stopped that conversation. Ethan was a great audience. He was always laughing in the back, in the corner. He'd be laughing at every scene. And that was actually a terrific experience for me. And that's where I first coined the phrase, I'm getting that Super 8 feeling. I used to make movies with my brother in the backyard when we were children. And we had a Super 8 camera that my father gave us, and we would make movies. And that Super 8 feeling, I've often said, is the feeling where you're making a movie simply because you love the movie. You're not doing it for money, you're not doing it for awards, you're doing it simply because you love the story you're telling and the filmmaking experience itself. And I remember Joel said, I'm getting that Super 8 feeling. He said, well, that's good. Let's go with keep that going. Leaving Las Vegas. When I read that script, I thought it was the coolest relationship I'd ever seen, even though one was an alcoholic and the other was a prostitute. I thought there was so much compassion in that relationship. And I had seen all the great alcoholic performances. Ray Milland in Lost Weekend, Jack Lemmon in Days of Wine and Roses, Dudley Moore in Arthur, Chris Christopherson in A Star is Born. All brilliant. And I took something from all of them. From Christopherson, I took that beautiful smile. even though he was drinking himself to death, that smile. From Dudley Moore, the idea that he didn't know how to modulate his volume. But it wasn't until I saw Albert Finney in Under the Volcano. I saw him walk through the streets of Mexico, and I went, that guy's really drunk. And I asked about it. I asked Mike, because Mike had worked with Albert, and I said, was he really drunk? And then it got back to me that Albert said, no, you tell Nick that I would take a swig and I would spit it out just so I get the taste of it, and I wasn't really drunk. I said, okay, cool. And then my cousin, Roman Coppola, he said, you should go hire Tony Dingman, who was at that time, very drunk, also a poet. Hire him and just watch him and have him be your drinking coach. And so I had Tony on the set with me all the time, and the poor guy, he'd be curled up in a fetal position in my trailer as I'm playing bongos, because I was trying to play bongos to get some kind of syncopated rhythm, some sort of music for the character. But I would watch him. He would say the most poetic, drunken things. Like, you do not kick the bar. You lean into the bar. Because it's not vino veritas, it's en vino veritas. He would just spout these things out, and of course I put them all in the movie. We mustn't kick the bar, we lean into the bar. Because it's not vino veritas, it's en vino veritas.
Who the fuck are you talking to?
It was a 4-week shoot. Thank God it was only a 4-week shoot, because there were a couple of scenes where I really wanted to be hammered, because I wanted to be out of control and have them photograph that so I could reach that kind of credibility of authenticity of what I saw in the streets of Mexico and Under the Volcano. The scene that comes to mind is the casino scene where I say, I am his father, and I flip the table and have a blackout. I didn't know I was going to go there. I knew I wanted something extraordinary to happen, and they kept it and they put it in the movie.
What? No! No! Fuck you! Fuck! Fuck! Ah!
To the 16 millimeter, I would say that it is phenomenal for film performance. When you have a camera that big, and these 35 millimeter cameras with these lenses like that in your face, that is something you have to try to get past. You have to be bold with that, but it's not something you really want to think about. When you have a camera that's that big, and it's just floating around, anyone could be a great actor. It catches the most minimal nuances, and you're not even thinking about the camera, so it's effortless. I can tell you specifically that I made that movie saying to myself, I'm never going to win an Academy Award. Nobody wants to make this movie. And because I wasn't going to win an Oscar, I said, I don't care. Let's just make the movie. Let's be down and dirty. Let's be, punk rock or jazz rock or whatever it was. And so it was completely unexpected, which is to say I'm deeply thankful. I think Gary Oldman once said the sound of applause is not to be ignored, and I am thankful that happened, but it was totally a surprise. Con Air. Cameron Poe was really a fantasy of, as a young boy in Long Beach, California, growing up, skinny kid who read Incredible Hulk comics, who wanted to not be bullied and, wanted to be Cameron Poe. That was my fantasy of who I wanted to be, of who, I would have liked to have been at that age. So I was kind of creating a character that was like the Uber version of myself if I was a Southern badass. That was my expression of that, even though I'm not that. It was an interesting set to be on. It was a completely testosterone-addled set. Everyone doing push-ups and chin-ups and trying to see who could run faster. And there was always some sort of competition happening on that set of machismo. I think the genius, if there is a genius of that movie, and I think Jerry Bruckheimer's genius, I would say, is that he knew how to make formula pictures, extraordinarily commercial, but he came at it with an independent edge. I mean, all the actors in that movie, people like Ving and John Malkovich and Buscemi, we all came out of indie movies. So that was kind of I think Jerry's true genius with that. Face Off. Face Off was really the direct result of another movie I made called Vampire's Kiss, which I considered my laboratory. And in that movie, I really wanted to find a way to express, again, my kind of German expressionistic dreams, aka, like a la Nosferatu or Caligari, where these actors were doing these extraordinary faces and body language that was not necessarily natural, but expressionistic. That's my favorite movie I've made, by the way. And I knew that I had to find a vehicle that would allow me to do that, where there was some mechanism of truth or reality in that the character was losing his mind. So his behavior, his body language, his facial expressions were also the result of a man who was having a nervous breakdown. So therefore, I could become very stylistic. So a lot of the body language and facial expressions went into Face Off. But John Woo, who is also, very operatic and musical, extraordinary filmmaker, he showed me his movie Bullet in the Head. I knew once I saw that movie where I could go in terms of style and in terms of right up against the edge, operatic, if you will, emotion. And so a lot of the stuff I discovered on Vampire's Kiss, which I enjoyed, I could put into a movie that would later become a mainstream and commercial film. So I was like a dream come true. Here I was doing these kind of abstract, ontological facial expressions in a movie that was going to make a ton of money, which I was thrilled with the results. We had the luxury of looking at each other's dailies. I would see what John would do, and then he would see what I would do in playback, and then we could find ways to mirror one another and match it. When I first reported for work on that movie, it was the stuff I did in the priest's attire, like the whole headbanger, head rolling stuff, and the clapping and the grabbing of the young lady, and all the crazy stuff about Handel's Messiah. And I know John saw that, and he was, oh, so we're going to go with that kind of acting. But really, he got to play Castor more than I did. I was only Castor for once the credits were over, I was done playing Castor, and then he just took it and ran with it for the rest of the movie. One day I would like to do a movie where I'm Castor through the whole movie. Bringing Out the Dead. It wasn't too hard to act in that movie. I think it was about not a full 6 months, but running close to 6 months, all at night. And paramedics, this particular paramedic was working entirely at night, dealing with exhaustion. He was approaching burnout. I would work all night, and then I would still get on a plane for my weekend visit with my then child son, Weston, at the time, so I could have my weekend visits with him, then get back on a plane, go back and report for duty. So needless to say, I was very tired. But all that just went into the character. I went on a few ride-alongs, which was, I don't know if it was the most ethical thing to do, but I wanted to do the research. Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan, that whole area at that time was not, when we were filming, was not the same thing as it was when Connolly wrote the book, or his experience. It was a much more dangerous and scary place. I think whoever was mayor cleaned it up pretty good. But I went on the ride-alongs, and I do recall one kid, African-American kid, got shot through the ass, and I'm in the back of the wagon, and he still got gum in his mouth, and I'm worried he's going to choke, and the other paramedics are injecting him and getting him ready and prepping him, and I just, give me your gum. I took the gum out of his mouth because I thought he was going to choke, but he's looking at me, so I don't know if he thought he was hallucinating or what, but he recognized me. It was just very strange. Anyway, I did call Marty. I said, Marty, I had some pretty interesting experiences, but it's not the same Hell's Kitchen that Connolly wrote about. But I did learn about a few things that were pretty hardcore, Adaptation. Wow, adaptation. When people say, I love Donald, I get jealous, because I don't remember playing Donald. I was so into the Charlie Kaufman headspace, and Charlie and I would spend hours interviewing. I would interview Charlie, and I tape recorded all the interviews. He said, well, I'm going to let you do this if you promise it never goes anywhere. And I said, Charlie, I'm going to light them on fire, I promise you. And I did. I poured kerosene on it, lit them all on fire, they're all gone. But I went through all the motions with Kaufman. I said, well, let me see you get angry. Okay, what do you like when you... And he was a good actor, actually. Charlie Kaufman is a very good actor. It was twice as much dialogue as everybody else. And I would go to set, and if I got out of bed on that side and I was in a good mood, I said, let's start with Donald today. And if I woke up the next day and I got out of bed on that side and I was in a bad mood and cranky, I'd say, let's start with Charlie today. So we'd shoot the whole thing one way. It was either Charlie or Donald. And then take what I did, put an earpiece in my ear, and do playback while I looked at a tennis ball on a stand like that over there, and imagine I'm either Charlie or Donald and talking to one another. It was probably the most acrobatic challenge as a thespian I've ever had, and I'm not even sure I could do it again. I'm not sure I could.
But anyway, it's cool for my killer to have this modus operandi, because at the end, when he forces the woman who's really him to eat herself, he's also eating himself to death.
I'm insane. I'm Ouroboros.
I don't know what that word means.
I've written myself into my screenplay. That's kind of weird, huh?
You know, Meryl was great, and Chris was great, and, you know, they got their Oscars, but cool. I was just, it's all good. They were brilliant in the movie, but it was the most challenging thing I've ever done. National Treasure. I did not expect National Treasure to be a hit. I did know that I was working with a high school classmate named John Turteltaub, who was the director. The two of us were crack-ups. I mean, in high school, we were always making jokes and cracking each other up, and he got the lead role in Our Town, and I got the crummy part of Constable Warren, and he never let me forget it. And I got my revenge when I got on the cover of GQ. And John admitted to me, you know, I went into the store, and there you were on the cover of GQ, and how come Nick's on the cover of GQ, and I'm not on the cover of GQ? It was that kind of relationship, high school kids. But that kind of fun and playfulness carried through with the making of National Treasure. So I think I really have to credit John for the humor and the success of the movie. And John Voight actually said, you know, Turteltaub's terrific. He knows how to make a souffle. One false move, this whole thing's going to fall apart, but somehow John Turteltaub managed to put it together in a way that was delectable and delicious. And but I have to attribute the success of that film to him. Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. I was a big fan of both Werner's and Klaus Kinski. And having seen all of their movies, I knew, not unlike what I knew when I saw Bullet in the Head with John Woo, where I could go with performance. And I really wanted to challenge Werner. I wanted to be the California Klaus Kinski. I wanted to go all out and even scare him at times to get to the core of that character. And I remember I had this vial of something called inositol, which is like a saccharin substitute. It looks like Coke, but it's not. It's sugar, really, or a sweetener. And I would psych myself up, you know, and I'd snort this and try to get into the headspace. And Werner, everyone's kind of getting a little flipped out about my psych-up process to get this scene because I'm going nuts and I'm high on Coke. And Werner was like, now, Nicolas, what is in that vial? And this is right before action, and I'm now the California Klaus Kinski. I don't have to say it's not Coke, you know, but because it's going to break the imagination, because I'm psyching myself up. I was completely dry on that movie. I wasn't drinking, I wasn't nothing. It was an impressionistic performance, but nonetheless, he broke my concentration. And I said, get it, Coke! Get off my set! Get out of New Orleans! This is my city! Everybody was like that, and then they said action. And I was the guy. I was in the headspace. I'll take 25% of the dope uncut.
That means you get my price.
That's one way of looking at it. The other is you get to keep 75% and not go to prison for the rest of your life. Mandy. Panos is really a visionary. He's a genius. He's not like anybody else who makes a movie once every 8 years. His Black Rainbow movie, I didn't sleep for a week after I saw that. Originally, he wanted me to play Jeremiah Sand. I was playing Army of One at that time. I was in Vancouver. I had long white hair and a long white beard. And he said to me, I want you to play Jeremiah Sand. And I said, well, why? He says, because, you know, I think the character's like a California Klaus Kinski. He literally said that. And I said, well, I am the California Klaus Kinski, but I don't want to play Jeremiah Sand. I want to play Red. And he said, well, this is a movie about age versus youth, and I don't see you as Red. Because at that point, I did look like Father Time. I was fully, you know, in Gandalf mode. So it didn't work out. And then about a year later, and Elijah Wood was the one who brought us together, and I'm thankful for Elijah that he did that, but he came up with the idea that I should play Red. And Red was a character that I wanted to portray because I felt I do have the power of imagination, but I also felt I had the life experience to play Red. And having been through love and loss and going through, you know, what was going to be my third divorce, and also my father had passed away, and that really stuck with me. And so I knew I had the emotional content to play Red, because Red is really a being who's contending with loss of love. And it's interesting because if you look at Panos's notes about the picture, he was contending with the same thing, not in terms of the romantic love, but more in terms of familial love and loss. So we were in step the whole way, and I think we found a way to calibrate the amount of emotion when and where, and then also in terms of body language, in terms of the fight sequences. Before Red drinks the kind of supernatural skull juice, hallucinogen, if you will, that transforms him, Red is much more ferocious as a fighter. And we thought about Bruce Lee, and I showed him an old take of Bruce, Lee and Enter the Dragon, where the camera goes in really quick and he snaps him, and it's like that look, that fantastic, those big eyes. And so I want us to try and get that shot, And that scene, we got it, where the camera came right in, so I was thrilled with that. But then after the skull juice, Panos wanted more to be like Jason from Friday the 13th. To which I thought, because I don't really watch slasher films. I did watch the one he wanted me to see, but I thought more like the ancient Gollum, not the one in Lord of the Rings, the ancient Gollum, the Jewish Gollum, which was a statue come to life. So Red becomes more of a monolith, if you will. So all those little details were planned out with Panos. Together we formed it.